Well, hello, everyone. We talked about the Apollo program, and let's now talk about what happened after the Apollo program from the 60s and 70s and talk about what happened until today with the space program. So the space program to return, I count the space program really to return people to space and hopefully go to the moon and beyond. Well, let's see what happened after the 60s and 70s, after the Apollo missions. I think it's not very exciting. That's my opinion. And let me show you why I think that. Well, all right, we have Skylab. Skylab was a space station, the first space station with crews from 1973 to 74. Don't have to worry about the dates here. I'm not going to ask you these specific dates. So Skylab is kind of interesting. I remember as a kid being kind of interested in it, but then I realized, hey, okay, it's a space station in orbit around the Earth. We already sent people in orbit around the Earth, so it's nothing really big news. So yeah, we already had sent people into space and around the Earth. So I mean, it's not that exciting. But you know what was more exciting is this. I can show you this. It actually, after we got the crews out, we only had the crews in there for a couple of years, and it was orbiting without crews for a while. And it kind of, it was in a degrading orbit where it got a little closer to the Earth as it orbited. And it actually entered the atmosphere in 1979, and debris broke up. A lot of it burned up, but some pieces fell in Australia. That was kind of exciting. I remember, people wondering where it was going to hit, and and then they found out, oh, it's going to hit middle of Australia, in a unpopulated area. And they're looking. There's a piece right here that was landed in Australia. So here's the debris coming in. So that was a little bit exciting. And then we got the Space Shuttle, which, well, the first, actually, I was kind of interested in the first Space Shuttle because the prototype was called Enterprise. Enterprise, named after the USS Enterprise from Star Trek. Maybe you have heard of that. I'm a big original Star Trek fan. I'm a Star Trek fan, not all the series, but I love Star Trek growing up as a kid, and even as a baby, I was watching the originals on TV. But the first one was not the first space shuttle. Took off on the top of a 747 and was released, and it was able to fly in the atmosphere like a plane and land like a plane. The first one never went into space, but they call it the Enterprise to honor Star Trek, and of course the Enterprise. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then we had more space shuttles from 1981 to 2011. But I wasn't very excited about this because we already had sent people into space. So this is old news. I mean, it's kind of like going out and, I mean, the first airplane that flies, in the early 1900s, the Wright flyers, the Wright brothers and Kitty Hawk, that's exciting. But then after a while, when you keep seeing airplanes in the sky doing the same thing, I mean, do you go outside and see an airplane and say, oh my God, I can't believe it, there's an airplane? I don't do that. Maybe some people do that. I mean, my son kind of does that, not as much anymore. But you see, if something's already happened, the first, that's the big deal. If something's already taken place, I mean, a profound moment, I don't get excited by the after, what happens after that, the same kind of thing. So a lot of people like the shuttle. Thought it was interesting, but I didn't think it was very exciting. And so there's a launch of the shuttle, and there's the shuttle in space. Well, there's some terrible things happen with the shuttle, like the Challenger disaster in 1986, where there's a faulty O-ring, and it caused the booster. There's the booster. You can see there's the shuttle on the booster, how it took off. These space shuttles didn't take off by 747. These were pretty much launched into space, and then they came back in and landed like a plane. Well, this one was, I mean, I remember watching this on TV when I was 19, 20, and I remember it was just terrible. You see, I mean, everybody's excited to see this go up, and it blows up, and all these 7 astronauts died in this. And they say, I don't know, one of an astronaut by the name of Story Musgrove that wasn't in this mission. He said that he thinks the astronauts made it. They're in from the cockpit. There was an enclosure in the cockpit that they made it the initial explosion, and that they died when this thing hit the water, which I mean is all bad. It's just terrible. So I remember this happening and kind of put off this for a little bit longer. I mean about that, but that we continued on. We continued on with other missions, and then another one. I'm showing some of the bad stuff that happened, unfortunately. The Columbia. This one had a faulty, I think, faulty tiles on it, insulation tiles that broke off, and that caused a breach of the from the friction from the heat. And this one, upon entering when it came in, it was going to be it was entering the atmosphere, and came in, and it just kind of broke up, and these 7 astronauts died. So just terrible. So this was some terrible times in the space program. And then we have the International Space Station from 2000 to present. You can still go out and see the International Space Station. There are websites that'll tell you where to look for it. And this was kind of interesting because it had a number of people living in space, but we had already sent people into space. We already had a space station, the Skylab. So this one, I mean, this is interesting. You can go out and see it. It's a place where the Space Shuttle would dock, and you see it in movies too. Sometimes they feature this in movies, but again, old news. It's just, 50 something years ago we had people in space, so not that excited about the space station. Seeing it's kind of neat. I mean, if you were excited about the space station, hey, that's fine. But if I kind of want to progress. I want to have something better than sending people to the moon, or at least going back to the moon. Well, now we have SpaceX, founded by Elon Musk in 2002, and this is to reduce costs to get into space, privately funded. And also, Musk is really wanting to colonize Mars eventually. I mean, it's a pretty interesting idea, but we haven't done it yet. So maybe taking some steps. But again, here are some of the rockets that are used in SpaceX. Is going on now. I mean, we're sending things into space, satellites into space, people into space now, but we already sent people into space. So it's kind of interesting with Musk and all of his exploits. And so I mean, if you like space, I think SpaceX is interesting. But again, we've already sent people into space. It's old news. Here's a Falcon 9 rocket launch from Cape Canaveral in Florida. Every time there's a rocket launch, I think it's pretty interesting. I mean, I'd love to see one of these. But now let's talk about something that we can really, that kind of excites me now. I mean, finally, the Artemis 1 mission that has the Orion spacecraft just had a mission. Just recently, within the last few months, to go back to the moon, without people yet. But soon there'll be astronauts. Finally catching up to the 60s, finally getting back to where we were 50 plus years ago. So here was a launch of Artemis 1. And this is a rocket. I'm kind of interested in this rocket now. Now, if this rocket weren't doing much, I wouldn't be interested. But it's the top part here, where the Orion spacecraft, that's the Orion spacecraft. The rest of this is just to get into space. I mean, just kind of like the Saturn V rocket. It's a stage, there's boosters, and to get it into space. But this is planning to send astronauts to the moon. And at least we're getting back to where we were. So here's the Orion spacecraft. And this is what's going to take astronauts to the moon, hopefully pretty soon. And I'm not going to go through all of this, but sorry, there it is. Here's the launch right over here. You can kind of follow along from there's kind of like, you can see the US right here. There's Florida down here, and there's the Gulf. So the launch, and then following the spacecraft and to the moon. And we just went to the moon, not with people, but this Artemis 1 mission went to the moon and came back on kind of a practice to sending people there, and it's showing you what's happening here. So I'm not going to, you can take a look at this slide at some point, but all right, so it went to the moon and kind of did a little, orbit, a little dance around the moon, another orbit, then coming back, and it was successful. We went to the moon. We went to the moon and came back finally again. Hey, only took 50 something years. So, and here's a view of the nice looking moon. It's good to see the moon up close, and the Orion spacecraft. And here's the splashdown, and we did it. Now we just have to have people in there. And this capsule, instead of fitting 3, can fit up to 6 people. So a little more roomy. And now, I mean, here's a good, really nice site you can go to, the Artemis site, what's going on. And here's their goal by 2024. Hopefully this can happen. I mean, that's pretty quick. The Artemis mission will land the first woman and first person of color on the moon. I can't wait for this, because then we'll get back to where we were, and maybe we can branch off from there. I mean, it's tough to go farther places than the moon with people, but at least we'll get back to where we were. This is really exciting stuff, I think, at least the Artemis. The other things happening, orbiting around the Earth, again, I think it's old news. If you're excited about it, that's great. I'm excited about this. I'm excited about Artemis. I want to see what's going to happen. And hopefully Artemis 2 will go up there. We'll just get people in space. And then I think it's Artemis 3 that's going to land people on the moon by 2024. And you can keep track. Go to this website, and you can find some great pictures. You can find some plans to get into space, to get to the moon. And yeah, I'm excited about this. At least finally something I'm excited about when talking about the space program. I was excited with the Apollo missions. I mean, I wasn't really much. I was just a baby when they were happening. But now, maybe you guys can get excited about this. That would be great. And then branch off. At least maybe won't take as long to move further out into space as we did in the last 50 years. So that's it. Hopefully you liked this. If you didn't, that's okay too. So talk to you soon.